Hopefulness, day 13. I literally have to keep the videos of the day before on my phone so that I can play it back and know what day it is because I screwed the whole thing up. Anyway, I'm kind of tired, but not just sleepy tired. I'm kind of also tired trying to be my own damn cheerleader. It's a huge pain in the ass. It would be nice if I had somebody who, had my back and could talk to and would be supportive and prop me up and all that good stuff and say, you can do it. 'Cause I am not equipped to do that on a regular basis. Not yet, anyway. And I'm working on it to some degree. I mean, what was it? 2.5 years ago? When I got discovered, and then a month later, he's on the phone with me and he's like, you gotta be your own cheerleader. And that's the last time I talked to him. That was the mentor that's been working in the media for 4 decades. I mean, he's been in media, at least based on what I could recall, what I could find of his career, for about as long as I've been alive. And with the job that I had the interview yesterday, and I'm pretty certain. I mean, the details, this woman didn't let me have a word in. There was not a conversation here. She just spouted off so much stuff that I was like, okay, there's a lot to process here. It sounded like they wanted some kind of, managerial type thing or something. I'm not even sure. Or at the very least, pursuing of a managerial position. I'm like, I don't fucking know what I want to do with my life. Last thing I want to do is tell people I want to be a goddamn manager of something. Which I'm sure is not ideal in an interview situation. I don't fucking know. I'm a play it by ear kind of person. I'm not a plan things out in 5 or 10 years, because what the fuck? Let me ask you this. Did you see COVID happening? And lockdowns? And economic distress and all that shit? Because if you didn't, your ability to predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years is just as equivalent as everybody else's. And so planning that far ahead doesn't seem pragmatic. Not in this day and age. It used to be that. It was smart. Back when I was a kid, that made sense. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager, it made sense to... I need to wash that. I need to wash all this, but whatever. It made sense to have, this whole 5-10 year mentality and, loyalty and all that, because the behavior of the world was associated with stuff like that. But now, things change so much. They change often, and they change rapidly. And because of that, it's extremely difficult to determine if something like management is something that you really should be wanting or pursuing. Nevertheless, again, it was this marketing thing. I want customer service related stuff when I'm going to be dealing with, because I know at least I can do it, even though I'm not. It's not ideal. You know, and there was so little. You know, it doesn't matter. I told her at one point, I was like, no, this doesn't sound good for me. It's not what I'm after. And so, interview ended. The reason I was even bringing in all this up was that, like, I need to go do the car thing. I need to go rent a car. And I need to do the stuff that I've been needing to do. That really, I mean, it's just basic daily errands, and it's nothing more than that. But, you know, still afraid of unknowns, rejection, and other weird factors that, you know, get in the way of just doing daily shit. And I mean, you know, most of the problems are in my head. It's just like when I did the driving test, or when I was doing the original driving lessons. It's like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm more than prepared in one way or another. And, you know, in doing so, to kind of light fire under my ass for some other things and open up the doors for some other things too. But it's just, it's part of my, it's part of my disability, my inability, if you will, to be a normal human. It's what neurodivergence is. And because I've got nobody, I have no support system, I got nobody to talk to, I have no feedback, I only have me. And part of it's my own doing. Part of it is the failure that is my brain and its inability to, well, be normal, to be neurotypical, socially, etc. But it's also certain actions that I've taken that separate myself from others. Partly due to things like depression, PTSD, and such. And it's like, what the hell am I going to do in 2 or 3 months if I don't have a job, the money runs out, you know? What does one do? Not much. So I'm on the job hunt, like I said before, previous video. But I'm trying to find stuff that, like I did another, I applied yesterday for another job. It's like $25 an hour or something like that. And it's kind of like another sort of inventory industry style thing. Because, I mean, you know, inputting data into a machine is not exactly hard. Making, you know, phone calls with people, ordering parts or whatever it may be isn't something that's problematic for me. I've never done inventory control. You know, there was one thing I actually wanted to do back when I was working at the Walmart neighborhood market. It's like, I wanted to work back in the back with the ladies that were like inventorying everything, but at the same time, it seems pretty daunting. But you know, taking orders, fulfilling orders and stuff, that's not problematic for me. I just hate the weird corporate culture of like, what is it? I mean, first of all, like them wanting you to be motivated into something beyond just the title. It's like, fuck, I just want to fucking make money. Get off my ass. Who cares about what we want to do in the future? I know, you want to invest into something. This is an investment, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I need money. Shut the fuck up. It's like, I couldn't even remember what the hell the job was. It wasn't until after the interview that I was able to find the email that that was associated with the job listing. Because I was posted on Indeed, and so I applied via Indeed. And whenever you send, or at least have it set up the way that I have it set up, whenever I send out an application, it sends me an email, and it has a direct link to it and everything too. But you know, it was like down quite a bit because emails easily get flooded. So, it's just like, yeah, I know I'm gonna bullshit my way through stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, there seemed to be an air of desperation as well in that interview. It's like, look, you can have a conversation with me about the job, about the nature of it and everything. I don't want to have to deal with that shit. It's a pain in the ass. And plus, who the hell thinks the way that they, like, that's another thing too. It's like, in an interview, often they ask these very weird, specific questions, and I'm like, who thinks that way? Like, who thinks with this, like, thought process and these words and this mentality? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't feel human, for one. I mean, it's like, how in the heck, like, okay, when I had my last interview at iHeart, I sat down with the two people who ended up being my bosses. Literal physical sit down, we had a conversation with each other. Sure, there were questions, and there were, industry terms and stuff like that, but they weren't. The questions, the line of dialogue and everything, they weren't curated in a way that sounds like some sort of official interview type thing. It was a conversation. It was people talking to each other. It was a question about this. It was a thought here. And it's like, but yeah, there were a lot of things that were good about the process of me going into iHeart. Now, there were some things in iHeart that definitely need improvement. The fact that I barely got 20 hours a week as it was on a regular basis, and the fact that there was virtually no opportunity for me to become a full-time employee. There was opportunities for me to get training, which was useful, but at the same time, you know, it was always under 29 hours in some way or another. And it's like, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that spans the entire fucking nation, and you can't try to have us work a little bit more. It's like, what's the fucking point? Yeah, sure, opportunity, but I mean, opportunity is not guaranteed. What I need is guarantees. And I know, nothing in life is guaranteed except death and taxes, unless you're rich, and then it's just death. But it's like, stop mistreating people. You know, like I gave on my LinkedIn profile, because I don't fucking consider LinkedIn anything but social media at this point. I'm applying jobs from there or anything like that, and it's whatever. If somebody wants to look up my LinkedIn profile and they see all of it, all right, fine. But I have ratings of all of my previous jobs, at least the ones that are listed. And or relevant in one way or another. Like when I worked as a support operator at iHeart, I put in a 3 out of 5 because there's some elements to it that just aren't good. You know, the fact that while I was off the clock, I just happened to be at work because transit and all this other bullshit. And I'd have to often be at work 3 hours before my shift because otherwise the buses and shit would shut down. Or they'd take forever. There was one time where one of the DJs was like, hey, I need you to help me with something. And I'm like, I'm not on the clock. I can't help. And then she was drunk, which didn't help either. So I'm like, if something happened while I'm off the clock, there's going to be some bigger problems. And then one of the producers overheard it, and he was trying to tell me that, you know, there might be some negative repercussions if I don't, like, assist people and stuff. And I'm just like, dude, I'm off the clock. There's liability issues when you don't work. When you work off the clock, I'm not getting paid. And she's drunk. Like, I ain't gonna fucking play with fire. It's like, that's not how that shit goes down. And there's too much of that shit as it is. Like, when I worked at Pizza Press, I gave that a 1 out of 5. Because people were clocking out but still working. Like, no, you don't fucking do that. You get paid for your work. Fuck you, pay me. You know? And so, like, after much, like, weeks of, like, just telling these fucking idiot kids, stop clocking out until it is time, until the work is done. It doesn't matter if the very last thing you do is walk out of the building with the trash bag and walk to the trash can, the dumpster, and throw it in there and then get in your car. Don't fucking do that. You do the trash, you come back, then you clock out and lock the fucking door and then get in your fucking car. Because I ain't doing work when I'm off the fucking clock. Especially if you're working wage. Salary's different, depends on agreements and shit. But just because you're salaried doesn't mean that you're just straight up the company's bitch either. You are more so the company's bitch. But you better be getting paid well for it too. And you also need to be able to have work-life balance. Because if you can't have a work-life balance, you better be getting paid a fuck ton of money. And while I'm not a good cheerleader for myself, I'm not going to let myself get taken advantage of either, to the best of my ability. You know, there's this image I saw the other day. I think it was a tweet talking about how in the artistic world, difficult to work with is effectively code for is hard to take advantage of. I don't think it's just in the creative industry. I think it's every industry. Difficult to work with means hard to take advantage of. Because if you're headstrong, and if you follow certain types of rules, especially laws, it's very hard for you to be taken advantage of. And that makes you difficult to take advantage of. You know, it's like, and it makes you difficult to work with, especially because that is how so many jobs have functioned for so long. It is problematic that that's the normal behavior. It's so normal, in fact, that people are like, just you gotta do what you gotta do. It's like, no. You gotta do what you gotta do to not be taken advantage of. You know, I mean, we still got people, literally, just had a conversation on the internet. People were talking about, like here's some foundation before we get into the real point. One of the big things about Jeff Bezos' wealth, Elon Musk or whatever, talking about how, well, it's not liquid cash. You can't just, give it away to people and whatnot. It's all in stocks. Okay, fine. It's not liquid. He's not rich then, supposedly. Even though he can borrow against it with very little interest. Sell a little bit of stocks here and there, no problem. It won't affect the price of the stocks. He'll be able to get more. He'll be able to buy back at any given point. And so his wealth, while it is not entirely liquid, it's akin to liquid wealth. It's just legally not liquid. It's a loophole. All right. Loophole established. Wealth established. So on a post about Starbucks firing employees, especially union leaders, people were talking about how, well, if people don't go to work, then the company won't last. Because if there's nobody there to sell, the sweet coffee flavors, then they're not going to make any money. And then people were like, well, the rich CEO or whatever, the boss is going to be fine. The other people who, don't go to work, they're going to lose their jobs and stuff like that. And then they're not going to be able to survive. It's like, well, neither is the store. And they're like, well, who gives a fuck? The rich person's still going to be able to, the boss is still going to be able to do fine even if the store doesn't survive. It's like, well, if all their money is tied in stocks and then the store collapses because nobody's working at the fucking stores, and then they're not making any money, the stock prices are going to go down. And as such, that person's wealth will go down too. You can't just stop at one point in the argument. You have to look at all of the possible effects. If you want, you could kill Starbucks in a day or two. No problem. Nobody goes to work. Nobody gets their, their coffee. Yeah, the people who were working there, who were making their money, aren't going to have jobs, but they're not securing those anyway. It's not like it's a fucking guarantee. So, throwing out that they won't have their jobs doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. It's effectively just trying to shift the conversation. And anybody who says that, I feel, is whether I know their background or not, it's indicative of the mentality of employers being job creators, rich people being job creators. They're only a job creator if they want to be. Not just because they have money. Money doesn't guarantee them creating jobs. It gives them the ability to. It gives them the opportunity to. But it doesn't make them create jobs. And even if you create a job, it doesn't mean the job's good. It doesn't mean that you're getting enough money. It doesn't mean that you're getting enough hours or any kind of benefits in association with it. If you go into an interview or a job with the mindset that you will not be taken advantage of, you are in a position of power that normally you wouldn't be. You have to say to yourself, I will not be taken advantage of. And you have to say it to yourself on a regular basis. I mean, when I was in jail, and I know this seems totally out of left field, but when I was in jail for the 2.5, 3.5 weeks, I can't even fucking remember anymore. 3.5, sorry. Because I was there almost an entire month. There were times when I started to accept the situation. And I had to fight against it. I had to tell myself, this is not normal, this is not okay. When everybody except for the few guards that are there is dressed in the same color, wearing the same shitty shoes, with the same shitty socks and the same shitty underwear, and you're walking in a specific line and you have to follow specific lines, and you can't really speak out of turn or anything like that. I mean, there's times where you're basically being treated like a child, walking down the hallway to the next classroom. It's not okay. It's not normal. I hadn't even been convicted. I was waiting for my sentencing. I was waiting for my court date, and I was already treated like I was guilty. Now, it doesn't matter if I was or not. It doesn't. We do not have a system, whether it be judicial or even in the working world, that treats the average person like a person. They are a cog. They are subordinate. They are not an equal. They are not a peer. It is a system of oppression. That's what it is. That's what most of this country is built on. And if you can walk into an interview or a classroom or anything where there is a scenario of a power dynamic. Now, obviously, there's an air of know your place because there's certain things you know, depending on circumstances, of course. And I'm not talking about know your place. I'm talking about pick your battles, understand the situation, read the room. If you're in jail, there's not a lot you can do. But at the very least, you can still be a person that says to yourself, I will not be taken advantage of. If you're in a classroom, same fucking situation. You know, you can make the classroom environment enjoyable by doing that. Work situation, same thing. I will not be taken advantage of. There's a difference between understanding hierarchy and chain of command versus equality. This is where a lot of our social problems come into play. There are people who feel that the hierarchy / chain of command is not only natural, but goes beyond that. One, it's not natural, it's a human thing. Naturalism fallacy is a big thing in of itself. Like, this is not natural. The phone is not natural. Penne pasta is not natural. Bread is not natural. Human beings, you could say everything that humans do is natural because humans are natural. But then that's a whole other conversation about a whole other, we're starting to talk about philosophy and shit. But with those people who have that idea that the hierarchy is natural, also the way that people are treated with subordinates and superiors being what they are, they also feel that that's acceptable. That the person at the bottom, it's okay to mistreat them because that's where they are. And that the person who's above them gets treated better. And so they're okay with oppression. They're okay with subjugation. The reason why, most of the time, too, is because they're somewhere in the fucking middle and there's people below them. And they are of the mindset that when they are mistreated because of their position in life, it's okay because they get to do the fucking same. Because if you are out of place, if you don't know your place, then you are a flaw in the system and effectively must be eradicated in some way or another, either exiled or destroyed economically, whatever it is. They expect the hierarchy. They live by the hierarchy. I know because I used to think this way. I don't think this way anymore. It doesn't matter what your position is in the world. It doesn't matter if you are a janitor, if you're homeless, if you're a CEO, if you're a teacher, if you're a student, if you're a board operator, if you're, the president, it doesn't fucking matter. We are all equal. Period. End of fucking story. We are all equal. Your job, your role, your position is not who you are. You are a human. You are to be treated as if you are a human. Doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your orientation, your age, it doesn't fucking matter. You are equivalent to every other person on the fucking planet. No one's better, no one's worse. Sometimes people are shitty, and that makes you feel better than them and whatnot, but it's different. We should all be treated equally, and as such, we should all have the mindset of, I will not be taken advantage of. So don't be taken advantage of. Don't allow yourself to think that you can be. Don't allow people to do it. Consent comes in many forms, and consent deals with boundaries. And there's certain boundaries that one must be able to identify about themselves in order to understand what it is they are as a person, how they feel, how they think, how they act, what defines you as you. Define your boundaries, you can then determine what actions are crossing them. Don't let people take advantage of you, unless you consent to it. But, and this is important, consent can be revoked. And with that, as always, have fun.